Welcome to the Big Book Study podcast for anyone and everyone interested in a spiritual way of life. We are a step study which meets each week on Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. You can find our website at primarypurposebigbookstudy.com. I'm Tina from Idaho. We also have Kathleen from Colorado, Heather from Saskatchewan, Nicole from Texas, and Dave from Oregon. Okay, we're starting our podcast tonight on page 67 with the fear inventory. Then we will be moving into sex and other harms. Notice that the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and the wife. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. But did not we ourselves set the ball rolling? Sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. We asked ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. And I pass.
Thanks, Tina. I'm Dave. I'm from Oregon. It's no wonder that we feel fear. We have lived our life in self-reliance, pretty much shutting out God in favor of our mind and our good ideas, our old ideas. And so many times our actual experience is that that has not worked. I mean, you can immediately think of examples. I swear I did the very best I could with how I worded that, or how I said that, or the choices I made, or I genuinely meant to help, and it goes badly. The relationship doesn't work, even though we tried our best, at least not in the way we wanted it to. The outcome isn't good, and we have that result over and over and over again. And it's no wonder that we feel so much fear, and anxiety is the word that I apply to it, because it's kind of this eroding thing, as the book says. And and the whole source of that problem is I have shut God out of the picture. What I haven't done is I haven't brought myself to the table, contributed with the motive of giving and only giving, contributing and only contributing my, you know, helpful ideas and thoughts, and then letting God uh, have the outcome, giving the outcome to God. See, it's when the outcome isn't what I want, I think it's bad, or it's wrong, or it didn't work, or all those kind of things. In the universe and in God's world, that isn't the case, because God has everybody, everything. I am never going to know what the right words were, what the right outcome is for everybody and all the ripples on the pond. Uh, but when I think that I'm the one who is supposed to figure it all out and do it all right and then get the outcome I want, I have the result that is described here. Uh, I even think that I can figure it out, and it just gets worse and worse. And with that, I'll pass.
Thanks, Dave. This is Heather. I just wanted to comment on a couple of sentences in there. As has already been mentioned, it was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our lives and our existence was shot through with it. Um, so what happens for us around here? What does that look like? Um, First of all, fear is usually around that I'm going to lose something or not get something that I want. And so I make up a story about that. And once I start that story going, then I, come up with actions that are impulsive with no thought of how they're going to affect others. I have no consideration for others. I only want to make myself feel better. And in doing so, those actions many times harm others. And then, as it says, it sets in motion trains of circumstances which brought us a misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. And we wonder why people are upset with us. We don't understand it. And it is just the idea that we think being fearful or worrying about losing something or getting something, those things are playing God. I'm trying to be higher power. And I don't have that power. I have a very small window view of the world. I do not see the infinite possibilities that are around us in the universe. And when I start thinking that I can affect that, then I am trying to be a higher power. And that's not going to work out for me. And I'll pass.
Thank you, Heather. This is Tina. Um, so I see here that wasn't it because self-reliance failed us, and this once we had great self-confidence. So at times we think we've got really good ideas, and we have in the past pursued those good ideas, and we've had confidence about it. And then when it didn't go the way we wanted, and as previously mentioned in the last podcast, we have tried to arrange the lights, the ballet, and the scenery, and the rest of the players in our own way. And so we're running the show. We're handing out scripts, and when people don't follow our scripts, when our self reliance breaks down, then our self confidence starts to slip, and we get into this fear. And this happens over and over again. We again try to run the show, and we try to be the director of the play, and get everybody to play the role that we assigned, and it doesn't go our way, and we have less and less confidence, um and we start having this fear. And for many of us, this ends up feeling like chronic self consciousness, and self doubt, and self loathing, and anxiety, crippling anxiety. Many of us have lived with constant anxiety, and it's just kind of something that many of us have felt used to. It's kind of like the under um current of our lives is this anxiety that we live with. And so this book is addressing it. It's calling it out. It's saying um that most of us that have this problem that the book solves have lived with crippling fear and anxiety. And with that, I will pass.
Thanks, Tina. This is Nicole. Yeah, just this idea that we're in, it's kind of been said, but we're in a job that's too big for us. And we're in higher power's job, and our two jobs are to stay close to higher power, so to actively work on that connection and that relationship, and then do higher powers work well, which is giving rather than getting, and being of service. So you know, the more we try to get our way and try to arrange life the way that we think it needs to be arranged, and we're trying to corral people and things and get them in a line so that we can feel better or we can feel safe. And in the process of doing that, we do all kinds of harm. And then a chain of events may occur as a result of our trying to control this and control that. Um, and we end up, it's sort of like we end up almost getting the thing that we're afraid of. We're not in now, we're not in reality, we're in the future, we're in the past. We're just too big. And yeah, we end up, our worlds get smaller and smaller and smaller. The more we try to control, we'll get a little bit of control, and then we find that we're restless, irritable, and discontented once again. It's not enough, it's not the right kind, we're not safe, and so we try harder. And then our world just keeps shrinking, and we try to control smaller and smaller things because we can't control the bigger things. And then we end up, isolated and completely blocked off from that source. So it's kind of that idea. If I acted as if I believed that a higher power will never leave me, and if I acted as if a higher power will provide me what I need, what might my next action be? If I didn't have to solve all these problems, if I didn't have to go out and get my needs met, and I just trusted a higher power would do that, and how I trust is I put my attention on the action of giving, um, what might that look like? And it's immediately freeing. It's immediate relief when we start thinking in those terms and then taking action by turning to giving. And that's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Nicole. Kathleen here, and I, um, back into context. So what we're doing in terms of our inventory, uh, we're listing these fears out. So that's part of our inventory. Is we need to ask ourselves, where am I self-reliant? What are my fears? Um, so that we can have awareness around them, so that we can ask to have them removed in this process, and so that we can stop relying on ourselves, as well as really it's reliance on our thinking, because what we really are trying to rely on is something else. We're making something else our god, whether it's another person or a relationship or a job or money or alcohol or sex or whatever. It's like that's what we're relying on to make us feel better. And, for us to manage these fears that we have. And what the book is asking us to do is we're going to list all those out, and we're going to carry them out in step 5, where we actually tell somebody. So, all these great comments, around how fear is, what fear looks like, and you know, what's happening is we're relying on something else or ourselves instead of something that can handle these bigger things. Um, Self reliance was good as far as it went, right? So self reliance is like right now. What do I need to do right now? And that's it. That's about as good as our self reliance can take us, is right here in this 24 hours. And with that, I pass.
All right, we'll move on in the reading. Page 68. Perhaps there is a better way. We think so. For we are now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust finite God rather than our finite selves. We are in the world to play the role He assigns, just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us and humbly rely on Him. Does He enable us to match calamity with serenity? We never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it is the way of strength. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let Him demonstrate through us what He can do. We ask Him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what He would have us be. At once, we commence to outgrow fear. This is Heather. So these two paragraphs are telling us the solution to fear, what we need to do if we want to be rid of our fear. And it's really quite simple. It's just trusting and relying upon God. And so what we do then is we surrender. We surrender our self-will and our self-reliance and our self-obsession, because if we look back on our fears, we can see that none of them was a solution. We never got a solution. And so it's really about kind of giving it up, giving up the role of trying to direct everybody, of playing higher power, and instead accepting that we have a higher power, that our higher power is there for us every day, every minute of the day. And all we need to do, it's very simple, it's just rely upon Him and what we think He would have us do. And that's how we get to serenity. And so that's kind of what they're talking about in the first paragraph. And in the second paragraph, they're just saying that, in order to trust a higher power, we have to have faith. And if we have faith, then we have the courage to deal with anything that's going to come our way, because we know that higher power has our back. And that, we will get, like it says in the big book, we'll get a hunch, an inspiration, an intuition, and hopefully finally, as our spiritual connection kind of grows, we'll have conversations with our higher power, and we will know what we need to do. We will get that guidance from higher power. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Heather. This is Tina in Idaho. So, this metaphor of the play and the roles is a really good one. We've been doing a lot of plate spinning. We've been trying to be what we think other people want us to be. We never get it right. Or we've been trying to get other people to be what we want. It's been a very complicated, exhausting, fearful, anxiety-ridden way of life to make other people our higher power, to make ourselves other people's higher power. It's a huge plate spinning mess. And what these two paragraphs tell us is that we are now just going to do, in that first paragraph, just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us. And then the last sentence of the last paragraph that was read, we direct our attention to what He would have us be. So what would higher power have me be, and what would higher power have me do? And each one of us now can look at that, and it just simplifies everything. And the plate spinning stops, and we can breathe again, because we are just simply looking to play the role that our higher power assigns. And with that, I'll pass.
Thanks, Tina. This about how the courage, what it means, what it takes, that to have faith means courage, and it's the way of strength. And what we're talking about here is a way, a program of action that is going to help us learn and get connected with this thing in the fourth dimension. It's not in front of us. It's not in a bottle. It's not a person. It's not a house. It's not being admired or being seen a certain way. I mean, it's beyond all of it. It's beyond everything that we see. And it's beyond everything internally that we think. So, and to do that takes a lot of courage, to be able to just be like, okay, I'm not going to keep trying to get answers and feel good and get things from anything I can see or anything within myself. And that requires this faith, and that takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength. Um, and the good news is that, the people that wrote this book, and for decades and decades beyond, and for all of our fellows, that's what they're doing. That's what we're doing. And it's working. There are people saying it's working. So we don't have to do it blindly that way. Um, and we're going to learn how to rely on God. And it's not just a flip of a switch. It's a willingness, but then we have to take the action that's going to keep that connection going, and that's what the steps are. So if we wanted to just make a decision, we could just go to, we could hang out at church and say I believe in God. But it's more than that. This is a program of action that helps us stay connected, and that takes strength and that takes courage. And with that, I pass.
Thanks, Kathleen. This is Dave. I love the instructions in this couple of paragraphs. The first contrasts how finite our thoughts and choices are. We want to act as God would have us. Absolutely, it's very important for us to speak up, to take action, to say words, to make the call. But this is all about leaving the outcome to infinite God rather than our way, so to speak. And that second paragraph, it just, I always had a struggle. I might not be the only one with feeling fear about being honest. And I really particularly had fear about being honest with people who I was, anxious about or worried about what they were going to think if I was honest. How are they going to react? Those kinds of things. And this paragraph gives me a different roadmap. The path to move from fear to honesty lies through faith. It doesn't rely through practicing how to say it, or figuring out exactly when the right time is, or how to say it in a way that I'm going to get what I want, the manipulation technique, those kinds of things. The path to having the courage to be honest lies through faith and trust that God will take that where God's plan would have it. And if I'm visible, if I'm vulnerable, if I tell the truth, and if I'm honest, whether it be in a one-on-one situation or a one in a group situation, doesn't matter either way. It isn't about what the other people might say or think, or how they're going to react. It is about what would God's plan be for my honesty? Where would that go? And not in the way that I necessarily map it out or plan it, but in the best plan for the universe and the best plan for all involved. And it's faith that allows us to have the courage to be honest even when we're feeling fear. Absolutely love that. And they say the result is we ask God to remove our fear, direct our attention to what He would have us be. I think He would always have us be visible and honest and be ourselves and bring ourselves. And we commence to outgrow that fear. But that'll pass.
Oh, thanks, Dave. This is Nicole. Yeah, this they give us, such specific directions about what we do. And in the beginning, maybe we're kind of just plunking out the keys. We're just playing chopsticks, taking the action of um, asking God to remove our fear and then directing our attention to what He would have us be. How we can give instead of get, and how we can be of service instead of trying to get something out of others or a situation. And this idea that we trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. I've heard it described that we see life through a straw. If a situation comes up and we're full of fear and we don't know what to do, we don't know how it's going to work out, we start strategizing and planning and trying to see our way into the future and arrange everything so that we're safe. Um, when we're trusting in a higher power has infinite ways, for a situation to resolve. And it may not be what we think we want, but it's always what we need in that moment. And one of the exercises we do when we're working this step is to remember a time when this idea that there's always a channel of good that's flowing, not as in good or bad, but a channel of love, a channel of our needs and what we need coming through. So we think on a time when other channels were blocked, we're relying on people to be our higher power or other things, and they're just people just like us. They're full of fear and insecurity and anxiety, just like us. And we're giving them too big of a job, too. Either we're relying too much on ourselves or we're relying on other people. So think on a time when other people, those channels were blocked, and there was a channel for good that was flowing. And maybe it wasn't in the areas that we wanted, where our attention was. We wanted to get those things, say when we were younger from our parents or whatever, but where was an open channel flowing of love, of goodness, of give. So I love that exercise because it's such a great reminder. Sometimes we just, especially when we're full of fear, we just get blocked to all the good that has been flowing. And it's a great exercise. Thank you.
Okay, let's read on here. Now about sex. Many of us needed an overhauling there, but above all, we tried to be sensible on this question. It's so easy to get way off track. Here we find human opinions running to extremes, absurd extremes, perhaps. One set of voices cry that sex is a lust of our lower nature, a base necessity of procreation. Then we have the voices who cry for sex and more sex, who bewail the institution of marriage, who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. They think we do not have enough of it, or that it isn't the right kind. They see its significance everywhere. One school would allow man no flavor for his fare, and the other would have us on all straight pepper diet. We want to stay out of this controversy. We do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. What can we do about them? We reviewed our own conduct over the years past. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where were we at fault? What should we have done instead? We got this all down on paper and looked at it. And my comment is that, yeah, this is really helpful. It's basically saying, we're not going to get into what is the right behavior. In fact, that is not what we do at all with the steps, not just on this subject. What it boils down to is not an opinion about behavior, but it's just stripped down to, is it selfish? Is it dishonest? Is it inconsiderate? Are we trying to get something here? Are we trying to get somebody jealous? Are we trying to arouse some kind of a problem? And are we that's all that's what we're looking at. And we have to learn what is selfish sex and what isn't selfish sex. And the way that we begin to do that is in this inventory. So we have an inventory and we're asking these questions, we're writing it down. It's part of our fourth step. So that we can see how we've been behaving around sex. And we're not, people in the program, sponsors, nobody's here to judge about, about sex. It's about whether or not we are harming other people by what we're doing, and whether or not we are in get instead of give around our sex, and our sexual relations. And then it says, where were we at fault and what should we have done instead? So we're going to begin to learn, what does giving in sex look like? What does contributing? And how would we go, what would we do instead? And because all of these things about getting, what is considerate in sex? And it's going to take time for us to learn that. But first we have to look at how it hasn't been that. And with that, I pass.
Thanks, Kathleen. This is Dave. As much as anywhere else in the book, this little section makes it so clear that their emphasis on the work that we have to do is about examining our motives. They say later on in the book that, we can go anywhere on the planet as long as our motives are good. But we'd better examine our motives. And this, of course, is something that they give us clear instructions about too in the 10th step. But for now, we're in the 4th step, and we're on sex conduct. And it's going to talk here in a minute about the word selfish in regard to motives. But whether or not it's one particular behavior or another, the question becomes, was it for selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? Was it what was being created? Are we, arousing jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? If we're not looking at these things, we are typically in get. If we are looking at these things, now in the 4th step and ongoing, as we continue to work the rest of the steps in this program, we absolutely have an opportunity to see the truth. And with that, I'll pass.
Thanks, Dave. This is Tina. So that first paragraph after now about sex is all about looking outside of ourselves and looking what's going on out there. And it ends that paragraph with, we don't want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. You know, we all have sex problems, so there's always problems to find, to point out, whatever. But that next paragraph says we reviewed our own conduct. So we go from looking outside of ourselves to bringing it back to our own conduct. And as with any other of our conduct, we're looking at, where have we been selfish, dishonest, inconsiderate? Whom did we hurt? You know, where were we at fault? What should we have done instead? So it's just barely starting to get into this idea of, what are we going to construct? What are we going to do instead? What is the positive direction that our higher power would have us head? And with that, I'll pass.
Thanks, Tina. I'll go ahead with the reading. We're on page 69 in the Big Book of AA. In this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? We asked God to mold our ideals and help us to live up to them. We remembered always our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised and loathed. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we've done harm, provided that we do not bring about still more harm in so doing. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it. God alone can judge our sex situation. Counsel with other persons is often desirable, but we let God be the final judge. We realize that some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice. Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does this mean that we are going to get drunk or not recover? Some people tell us so, but this is only a half-truth. It depends on us and our motives. If we are sorry for what we have done and have the honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe we will be forgiven and will have learned our lesson. If we're not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we're quite sure we won't drink or will not recover, at this time at least. We are not theorizing. These are the facts out of our experience. I see a lot. I'm Dave. I'm in Oregon. I see a lot of "we ask God" in those paragraphs. That sounds like prayer to me. We're particularly in, the process of doing this sex conduct inventory, asking God to help us see what our ideal for our future sex life is, and then to mold that and help us to live that ideal. It does note, sex powers, like all other powers, including anger and fear and all the emotions, are given to us as instincts for good reasons. We should not look at the procreative instinct in this case as any more bad or evil or anything else than any other kind of instinct that we have. And we want to just make sure we're not causing harm in regard to our behavior and our choices and what we bring around it. Beyond that, we treat this subject of sex as we would any other problem. And when we apply that relapse paragraph, that last paragraph, fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble around sex conduct. Obviously, selfish sexual relapse would be one way to put that. They make it quite clear the whole issue, again, is motives. We talked about that in the last set of paragraphs. That is where our focus is. That's where our focus needs to be when we're working the steps. And when we do that, we absolutely have an opportunity to recover from our addictive behavior. And with that, I'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, just addressing that, really the root of it is our motives and what's driving us. And, when it comes to our sex conduct, we can often, find that we have been operating on trying to get love, trying to get belonging, trying to get safety, trying to get approval. And trying to get ease and comfort. So, all of these old ideas that we have about ourselves, that we are, that we're not enough, that aren't, we're not wantable, things like that. And then we try to constantly prove and disprove that theory, like these old ideas, by using other people. And if they, you know, if we take their behavior and we make up that, okay, they're doing this and that means that I'm not enough. And so we just continually are on this cycle of restless, irritable, and discontented. We get a little bit of the thing that we think that we need. This, okay, in this moment, I feel like I'm enough because, there's sex happening. And then we find that we're restless, irritable, and discontented once again. It doesn't fill us up. Where we go right back to needing more, and and sort of blaming others, that type of thing. So this shift in our motives to give, how can we show up and share love? How can we show up and be visible? What can we, how can we create the intimacy that we want instead of trying to extract it from other people? So, yeah, just really what are our motives, what's driving us in each of these actions that we're taking. Thanks.
This is Tina from Idaho. Thank you, Nicole. So this section here is one of the sections, the first sections that starts to talk about constructing something new and creating new ideals that we grow toward. So this area of sex, the new ideal might be something like, sex isn't a substitute for closeness. It's an expression of closeness and love. So it kind of starts to turn things on its head, and it starts to reveal to us how when we begin to create these new ideals, whatever they turn out to be, we must be willing to grow toward them. We start to see that our ideals are about what we are contributing to life. Previously, it's been can we extract or take from life to make us feel okay or feel better or feel loved or wanted or whatever. And now it's again looking to our higher power. What would you have? What is it that's right for me, higher power, around sex? What do you want me to be around sex? And bringing that to a situation. And with that, I'll pass.
Okay, this is Nicole. I'll continue reading through the end of the chapter. To sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity, and for the strength to do the right thing. If sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others. We think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge when to yield would mean heartache. If we have been thorough about our personal inventory, we have written down a lot. We have listed and analyzed our resentments. We have begun to comprehend their futility and fatality. We have commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. We have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill towards all men, even our enemies, for we look on them as sick people. We have listed the people we have hurt by our conduct and are willing to straighten out the past if we can. In this book, you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. We hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from Him. If you have already made a decision and done an inventory of your grosser handicaps, you have made a good beginning. That being so, you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. So I'll just make a quick comment. I mean, it gives us very clear directions here on what to do in regards to sex, and really we can apply this to any situation. We pray for the right ideal, and that's the ideal that was just spoken of. What are we growing towards? What new thing are we growing towards? How can we turn from get to give? And if we, if we're troubled, we turn harder into helping others. So our approach to our problems has been to focus on the problem and to keep trying harder at the problem. Researching on the internet, whatever it takes, we just keep focusing and trying and trying and trying to attack the problem. And it's telling us to turn away from the problem into the solution, and in this sense, get out of ourselves completely, because we are people who are completely self-obsessed. So turning our attention to others and how we can be of help and service. And this last paragraph, it's kind of going through what we've done here in our fourth and fifth step. We've looked at our resentments, and their futility and fatality is that our resentments only ever harm us. They've never ever had any effect on other people, meaning we've never really successfully made a permanent change in others by resenting them or being angry or trying to force our will. And all it's doing is just like closing us off to that flow of love, to that flow of a higher power of our intuition and our goodwill towards others. And then we've looked at our fear, and that now we've made a list of our harms that we've done to others, and we are going to go out and take this action to try to straighten out the past. And what it's saying here in this last paragraph, that we've made a decision. We know that our way has not been working, and now we've made this inventory, and this is a good beginning. But this doesn't get us recovered. Being able to look at ourselves, we understand that self-examination isn't enough to get us to recover. But this is the beginning, and now we're going to take the next actions to move on.
Thanks, Nicole. This what was summing up about sex and how we're asking in each situation for strength to do the right thing, and what is the right thing, and for sanity. And so what this might result in is we just slow everything down. We're so used to running off our own thinking without even considering what we're thinking. And we just rapidly are moving through the world like a Tasmanian devil. Talks about the destructiveness of all of our resentments and our fears and our harms and and within our sex and all of that. And so we're going to slow down, and we're going to be doing something else. We're going to be pretty involved in our program. There's a lot to be done. There's a lot of actions to be taken, a lot of steps to work on. There's lots of people to help. There's lots of places to carry the message. And, that gives us a chance to slow things down. And even with our sexual relations, especially if it's really troublesome for us, we're going to have to really be thinking about what we're doing ahead of time. As we get into a situation, we're going to have to learn how to pause. We're going to have to learn how to ask. We're going to have to learn how to pray and see what is going to be the best use. We're not used to these new ideals that we have for ourselves and that we're finding and we're discovering. So we don't even know how to communicate them. We don't even know, we don't remember them. um, it's so easy for us to slip back into this old way of living, and it's a completely new way of living, and uh, we're going to take our time, and we're also going to turn to help others in these areas that are harder for us. Some areas are harder than others, and for different people. And because basically what I'm seeing here is because we have written out this inventory, which has taken time and it's taken prayer, and because we have really looked at what was going on for us in our selfishness and self-seeking and dishonesty and inconsideration and our fear, that we now are beginning to really see, oh my gosh, that's what it was. That's what's been going on. And how our thinking has been futile and our way of doing things, and that it has been fatal. We've blown up many things. It's hurt a lot of people. It's hurt ourselves. Um, and it's like an eye-opening experience as we begin to be like, oh, that's what's going on here. And the good news is we have a different way, and we can do that using the actions of these steps, and with the help of a sponsor. And with that, I pass.
Thank you, Kathleen. So, yeah, this process that we've been talking about, the resentments, sex, and other harms, we're seeing how this has not created the life that we say we want. Um, we've been getting the life that we've created, and it isn't what we want. We've come to a bottom around that, and so we've taken a hard look at these resentments, at these harms, sex and other harms, and it says that we begin to look at we have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies, for we look upon them as sick people. And what we realize is that we are the same as other people. We are sick and suffering. Other people are sick and suffering. And this starts to shift our perspective. And we realize that we have an opportunity here to um, straighten out the past by you know by correcting our own conduct, by analyzing our own harms, and there's a faith in this book. You read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. So in a sense, we have faith that this has worked for other people who have decided to stop blaming others for their lives not being the way they want them to be, and start looking at themselves and their own conduct, and become willing to straighten out the past, and become willing to see that we're all sick, suffering, and it has to begin somewhere, and we're willing to straighten it out because we've waved the white flag. I mean, life the other way was killing us. It wasn't working. It beat us into a state of reasonableness, and has made us willing to look at this different way, because many of us were at the end of our rope. We couldn't continue living in this way any longer. And that's when it says here at the end, if you've already made a decision and an inventory of your gross or handicaps, you've made a good beginning. So we have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about ourselves, and that puts us in a position where we move next in this recipe for recovery. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Tina. This is Dave. Two really clear instructions I see in the reading that was shared. The first is that we follow prayer with unselfish constructive action, that we don't stop with prayer. The instruction here is when we pray for the right ideal and for the strength to do the right thing, we then throw ourselves the harder into helping others and think of their needs and work for them. And that is what carries the power to quiet the imperious urge. They're referring to the sexual instinct here, when to yield would mean heartache. So prayer combined with action equals the power that we never had. Lack of power, that was always our dilemma. But the two in combination with each other, it is the flow of prayer combined with action that brings us the power that we are seeking to recover. And the other instruction I see is, as we finish up this fourth step, and we've looked at our resentments, and we've looked at our fears, and we've looked at our sex conduct, the sentence we have listed the people we have hurt by our conduct reminds us we want to look at all the ways in which we have hurt people, and there may be a few ways that resentment, fears, or sex weren't involved. And many of the instruction processes for the fourth step include an other harms worksheet, just to make sure that we capture all harms that we have created with our addictive behavior before we are done with our fourth step. And with that, I will pass.
Thank you for joining us today. Our next podcast will be on step 6, 7, 8, and 9. You can find our meetings at primarypurposebigbookstudy.com. We meet each week on Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Join us on the road of happy destiny.